Have you guys ever considered, since crossplay is such a huge undertaking, maybe paid character transfers from one system to another?
We did actually do that in the beginning when our console version, when the console launch was delayed and we allowed players to transfer their PC characters over because of it. No. It just gets too complicated in just the different realities of character storage between different devices and different, when you log into Steam, it's a different kind of system than it is when you log into Xbox. And so, again, it's something we could do. I mean, you can do anything, but it's just not worth it based on all the other stuff we couldn't do because of that. Frankly, I think crossplay has probably got more of a chance of happening than that does. Hey, I'm Matt Firor. I'm the studio director at ZeniMax Online Studios, best known for Elder Scrolls Online.
So Matt, we're here at GDC and you're celebrating 10 years. That's a decade, Elder Scrolls Online. Like, how do you feel after being on a game this long?
The crazy thing is that it's a decade since it launched, but we worked on it for 7 years before that.
17 years.
It's 17 years on one game. So, and it's funny, I've been in MMOs for a long time, so I did a game called Dark Age Camelot before that. So since 2001, I've launched 2 games.
What's it been like seeing technology improve? I mean, this is a funny question because a lot of it you can't use because your foundation is so specific because you guys were on the cutting edge of MMO open world tech. But what's it been like seeing that technology? And you guys have utilized some of it since then and like have it evolve and grow in Elder Scrolls Online specifically.
Yeah, I think the funniest story there in a long development cycle of very funny stories is that when we were setting up our server infrastructure for ESO in 2011, we essentially needed to come up with a way to make sure we had enough population balance in PvP, because PvP was a big part of the game design. And only like 25% of your population PvPs. So if you have a sharded, normal Dark Age Camelot WoW style shard system, there literally weren't enough people on the server to populate a 1,000-person PvP system. So we decided to do our servers a different way, and we instanced every zone instead of having shards, which is funny because now that technology is called cloud. And so we essentially wrote our own cloud service and have our, a data center in Texas and Germany. But the technology that runs under it is exactly the same that AWS would do now. And of course, back then, AWS existed, but it certainly didn't do live game support like that.
This is like kind of the interesting part about like being on the cutting edge of technology at the time. Is that like, I mean, people, and I ask you every time I see you, crossplay, yeah. Right? But like your foundation is very specifically built that it's very difficult for you to implement that, even with the tools given to you today, correct?
Nothing's impossible, right?
Right.
But it's just the level of effort required. We've been looking at crossplay forever, because obviously it would be awesome.
Yeah.
But it's not like we're not doing it because we don't want to.
Right.
It's just, it's a tough technical challenge with so many players, guilds, communities on one of our mega servers, like merging that with others, right? It's guild names and player names, and we just want to make sure if we do it right, and that means it's a pretty big technical challenge.
It's also like it's a juggling act too. If you're doing that, that means something else is going to be put on the back burner, another expansion. You guys are on a tight timeline every year to put out new content for those players.
Yeah, we have a new, for the uninitiated here, we do a whole new chapter for ESO every year that usually launches in June. And so Gold Road is our latest one. It'll be coming out this June on all our platforms. And yeah, when you sign up to do something like that, it just means when you do quality of life fixes and other fixes, including infrastructure changes, you kind of got to slot those changes in along with the new content. But we've been doing that for years now, so we're very good at it. But it just means when we do big things, it just takes a while.
You guys have been around for such a long time. I want to say like you're one of the like few survive, because I mean, like me, like we're both veterans of the industry, and like I've seen a lot of MMOs come and go over the years. Some that came out, like the WoW killer, right? Like all that. That was the coin phrase for a hot minute. But like, what do you think it is that's kept Elder Scrolls Online so successful over this last decade?
Wow, we could talk for hours. But,
right.
But I think at its heart, the reason why ESO has been so successful is that it is very easy for new players to get into who are not traditional MMO players. Like, hard to think how long ago this was, but we launched, reasonably like 2.5 years after Skyrim, right? So that brought just so many people into the Elder Scrolls universe, and we knew we had to make ESO work for those players. And that meant we made a lot of design decisions which a traditional MMO studio would not do, right? Super casual, easy to get into, any player can wear any armor, wield any weapon, right? Very forgiving class system. And so it's not grindy like a traditional MMO would be. And that, of course, led to our one Tamriel update in 2016, which made the whole world level-less, so you can play anything you want right from the get-go, right? Which is very much different than what I call Generation 2 MMO would do.
The traditional MMO experience,
Yeah,
right? Like
yeah,
the
yeah.
original one.
Yeah, it's funny. It's like almost one Tamriel took us back to Gen 1 MMOs, like Ultima Online, and right where it was free for all. You could do anything you want, a little bit of chaos, right? But that's awesome. It's a lot of fun playing in more of a sandbox than in kind of a what we call the beautiful hallway design of Gen 2 MMOs, like Dark Age of Camelot was one. You do one zone, and then you go to the next zone, and then you go to the next zone. And we definitely designed ESO to not be that. And I think that has been a core in its success, is players can just jump in and have fun.
So just as a fun question, how different would that Dark Camelot game be if you had the tools today available to you back then?
Well, I mean, much of the early development team of ESO came from Mythic, right? Because that's where I came from. And so a lot of Camelot's evolution would have been what I think ESO is. Obviously, Camelot was much more PvP focused, and it was a great game, but it was not a mass market game in the sense of today's mass market game. So, I mean, this is an Elder Scrolls game, ESO, so we have to be true to that.
Do you guys have those meetings when like there's a new tool or new piece of tech that's out that you really want to try to implement, and like how often does that conversation come up for ESO?
Not a lot, because our infrastructure, like I said, is pretty much set. We can change it, but that would be a huge undertaking. But on the client side, we've kept up. ESO is a very forgiving spec, so it can run on very low-level PCs and, frankly, on Xbox One and PS4. Right? It still runs fine on those platforms that are 2013 when they launched, right? So, and ESO runs great, 30 frames a second on those. But a couple of years ago, we made next-gen clients for the new generation of Xbox and PlayStations, right? So we do invest in making sure that ESO looks as great as it can on whatever technology you happen to have.
What do you think is important to continue to support the PS4 and Xbox One as long as you can, as opposed to like just leaving everyone in the dust and being like, hey, we're PC only now, and you only need a 490 RTX to get the ultimate experience?
It's a great question. I think the answer to that kind of lies in the question, and that's that those devices were actually pretty good for their day. Like, they were very, very powerful for 2013. The only limiting thing that they have now, and both of them have it, is memory. And right, we just keep adding more textures, more animations, more. And if we do ever age out of supporting those, it'll be because we're running out of memory. But we're not there yet.
Gold Road, talk a little bit about that.
So Gold Road is the 2020. Good Lord, it's 2024. It's the 2024 chapter for ESO. So since 2017, we've had these annual, you can call them expansions, but they're chapters that have about 30 hours of content and introduce some new features to the game, and we do that every June. Gold Road is the 2024 chapter for ESO, where we're going to a part of Tamriel you haven't seen since Oblivion. It's in a corner of Cyrodiil. Includes a little bit of Valenwood, which is the Wood Elf province, and a little bit of that culture too, because it's on the borderlands between the two. And it's a really cool story, kind of part two of last year's story, although you don't have to play last year, and where we introduced a new Daedric Prince. First time that a new Daedric Prince has been introduced in Elder Scrolls in forever. And this is kind of the story of how that happened, why she was unknown, and then you deal with that in Gold Road. So, it's beautiful. Like it's kind of an autumn-colored zone, so it's very visually distinct. And I think players are going to love it. Like, it's a great story, and our DNA is great storytelling, and so that's the main reason to get in and play and see what happens.
It's interesting to look back over the last decade, or in your case, last 17 years, and see how much the game has just grown from a scale standpoint.
Yeah, it's really crazy how big it is. It is a giant, giant game. I mean, I can easily say it's one of the largest video games of all time. We run on 6 platforms, Stadia. We did run on 7, but just pumping out content for 7 platforms, right? It means there's a giant infrastructure behind just pushing builds through the studio and QA and on all of that, from Mac to PC to older consoles to the new ones, right? So it's a giant undertaking, and it's when we step back and look at it after so many years, it's pretty amazing. Like I'll say, and the fact that we continue to do it and so many people continue to play the game, it's great. It's in a great place.
Do you guys have meetings like once in a while about redesigning the game, like from the ground up? Like, I mean, not to call you, but like Elder Scrolls Online 2, right? The infamous, do we rebuild, do we start over? Do you guys have those meetings often, and do you consider it internally?
We have those discussions all the time. Mm-hmm. And if you look back over the history of the game, pretty much we launched on PC, we changed a bunch of stuff between that and console launch. Console launch was huge. Then we made changes after that, which resulted in one Tamriel, right? So you can in many ways look and see that the current version of the game is already almost 2.0 from the launch game. It's just we do it incrementally and not all at once. But live service games like this, especially this type of live service game that's more of a virtual world sandbox, fun storytelling, community-based game, there's no reason to do a version 2 if there's so many people playing version 1. And we're still very, very successful and very happy with where we are.
After 10 years of being in existence and publicly for the community, how do you work with the community currently? I mean, because you have new players coming in all the time. You have, of course, your veteran players. Like, how do you balance out the community feedback to make the changes so, I'd like to word it this way, as many people as you can make happy?
No, that's a very good way to put it. 2 thoughts on that. One is we somehow have the best community in gaming. Like it's super welcoming. If you're a new player and you go into a zone and ask a question, people almost always help. Our guild system is very flexible and makes it easy to invite new players into guilds. It's a very welcoming community, even on social media, which is fantastic. And a lot of our success is frankly because of that. If you come from other games, you might not be familiar with ESO's flavor of how we do online systems and the skill system, but you log in and you have questions and people just help you, right? It's great. As for community being involved in game development, absolutely. Like I've been very clear over the years saying when we had to adjust the game after we launched on PC up through one Tamriel, we always did a kind of a third. 1/3 direct community feedback, like listen to what they're saying. 1/3 is looking at metrics and what the players are actually doing in game. And then the other third is what we think as stewards of the game that we should be doing. And if you triangulate those 3 data points, almost always an answer comes out of that. In a game like ESO that has so many variables, like any class can use any armor, wield any weapon. We have different armor and weapon sets scattered. Every zone has their own flavor, and which are like, 7 or 8 pieces of gear. And then if you have 45 zones in the game, right, the different way that you can spec out your character just gets exponentially bigger. And of course with that comes, we got to keep looking at balance because the players are shockingly well ahead of us in many ways on what they call the meta is, which is what should I be equipped in if I want to dominate in PvP. And we definitely take very much long looks at whatever the meta is and make sure that it's not too meta. If everyone in your game is suddenly a Nightblade wearing the same type of armor and nobody does anything else in PvP, you got a problem, right? So players would say we maybe go in a little too much and change things because it's fun. But obviously it's a lot of fun to dominate in PvP, but it's no fun to be dominated in PvP. So we gotta look out for everyone.
There's also the fact that if you're not spec'd right, this is you won't get in groups, and that's not fun either.
Yeah, and our PvP system is actually very, like ESO, forgiving for that because you can just be in an area with other players and not be technically grouped with them and get a lot of the bonuses, and obviously in PvP it's sometimes numbers versus numbers, so you won't be excluded for it, but you could be ridiculed.
If players can find a way to break something in your game and take advantage of it, they will.
Oh, yeah.
That's their goal, that's their job.
Yeah. No, and that's part of, that definitely goes with the territory, and we know that.
The high fantasy genre makes such for a good gaming experience, and whether it's narrative or stylistic, what do you think is about that genre that just has withstood the test of time for 3 decades? Yeah,
I mean, it's Elder Scrolls is Elder Scrolls, right? So we get everything that comes with that. It's not just fantasy, but in general, I think it's the old story that they told back in the mid-2000s, which is if you have a fantasy game and you're a player and you log in and you're like, all right, what flavor of elves and dwarves do we have in this game, right? It's like you log into a sci-fi game and it's like the whole world needs to be explained. Like, what are the rules in this sci-fi world? And so it's just easier just to understand because there's such a broad cultural awareness of Tolkien and all the other fantasy games that have gone before it. And sci-fi games or other genres, post-apocalyptic, right, tend to be much more groundbreaking in game systems and world and rules and magic, if there is magic and stuff. And so all that needs to be explained to the player, which can be overwhelming at sometimes, when you first jump into a game. So I think that's why fantasy games have had a big advantage just in getting off the ground, because you just don't need to explain so much to the player in the beginning.
We talked about the Golden Path. What's next that you can talk about for the ESO players hungry for more? Balance updates, path HDH, new content, nothing?
Yeah, no, we do. Never,
It's okay.
Never nothing. Yeah, so after Gold Road, it's we just keep doing what works. And if you look over the last 10 years, over the last 5 or 6 years, it's been all about chapters, right? And we're going to continue to do content like that. But we also do updates every 12 weeks with quality of life fixes and dungeon DLCs and smaller things. And we'll keep doing that forever, probably, the every 12-week thing. But, if you look back over our roadmap, we're not afraid to make changes if changes need to be made. And so we're not there yet, but we could be changing at some point, right? And if we think it's the right thing to do to break up content, for example, over longer periods, we'll do that. We'll just keep doing what we think is the right thing to do, the players think is the right thing to do, and we'll keep doing it.
Have you guys ever considered, since crossplay is such a huge undertaking, maybe paid character transfers from one system to another?
We did actually do that in the beginning when our console version was, when the console launch was delayed and we allowed players to transfer their PC characters over because of it. No. It just gets too complicated in just the different realities of character storage between different devices and different, when you log into Steam, it's a different kind of system than it is when you log into Xbox. And so, again, it's something we could do. I mean, you can do anything, but it's just not worth it based on all the other stuff we couldn't do because of that. Frankly, I think crossplay has probably got more of a chance of happening than that does.
What's your favorite memory over the last 10 years of Elder Scrolls that you can talk about?
Yeah.
That's the key, right? Like, oh boy, do you have stories.
Most of the story of ESO's journey is safe for work, so I could say it. But no, I think absolutely number one, it's day one, which actually was in March, because we pre-launched in the end of March 2014. So we had players in the game, but really the floodgates opened on April 4th, 2014. And I just got my main character that I still play to this day, and I have screenshots. Just there's a sit emote, right, where a chair appears under you and you sit down. And I just sat down and pretended I was an NPC in one of the main towns and just watched as players came in from the tutorial and just ran across the screen like locusts across the land. And there's a special feeling when you work on games like this when that happens, and that's probably my favorite memory.